Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Unlocking the Potential of the Veteran and Military Spouse Workforce with Donna Rogers. She is an HR expert. She's a veteran. She is a University of Illinois Springfield alumni and faculty member, former faculty member. So we're just really excited to have her with us tonight and to talk about this topic, which is so important. And we appreciate you being here with us and joining our learning community. Thank you so much, Sam. And so please engage with us and share your feedback and in our feedback survey that we will send after the event, and engage with us, ask your questions, be here with us in the chat. So we're here for you and we're here for it. So I'm just going to pass the mic to Donna and get this started. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank Innovate Springfield for the opportunity to allow me to get the word out here. And the program is called Unlocking the Potential of Veteran and Military Spouse Workplace. And it is looking like I'm not actually recording, so I just want to make sure.
Yep, I am. I have the session recorded on the cloud right now.
All right, my screen is not circulated so that you can see it, so it usually has a little green light around it. Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, no.
So we are really talking about more than just veterans here. We're going to be talking about the military spouse workforce, which my daughter is one, and my mother was one. And so I wanted to just introduce myself just briefly, although Sarah already did. I, as she said, am also a veteran, very young in this picture, of course. But I am in the HR field. I have been most of my career. And I was, after this very young picture, I spent 6 more years in the Illinois National Guard and left as a ground safety inspector and at the non-commissioned officer level of tech sergeant. So because I went in with 2 years of college, I already had 1 or 2 stripes when I started. So that was kind of a nice incentive. And has recently, as you can see kind of in the middle there, in the summer, was just recently added to the SHRM Foundation new veteran ambassador program. And their goal was to get about 250 people across the country. And we do have 6 people here in the state of Illinois, and I happen to be the only one south of I-80. So, so we all literally have just one goal, and that one goal is to have each of you hire just one person from the military military community, if you possibly can. And imagine, how that could, backfire, because employers could learn more about hiring the military community. And then, of course, they spread the word if they get good results, and that could, be even better. So, so that's kind of our goal. The focus of this program is for, different topics, which I know you probably read, Sam, especially you, when you decided to come on board here. And those of you who are watching it now, we're really going to focus on employment related challenges and trends in the military spouse and veteran employment area. And then what's the connection between the business case for actually hiring military people? And you'll see a lot of statistics, which is why I don't have the video on, because I kind of want you to focus on the stats and the details of this program. And then finally, we're going to look at best practices for sustaining them, because you could hire a military person, but if just like any other diverse group, if we don't make them feel welcome, they're going to leave. And so if we don't have some sort of affiliate groups or think about their life cycle as an employee, then it's a potential that we won't be able to retain them. And that's a really important thing, especially in this, this environment. So over the course, you'll understand those barriers, the whole kind of a list that we literally just went through, because those things, the sections are based on what the learning outcomes are. So let's start with the first one, understanding the challenges and barriers that the military community members face in finding work. And while I feel like this is important to understand that these challenges emphasize how there are many strengths that they bring to the workplace. So the training is about developing military cultural competence, having an awareness of unique employment challenges that members of the military community face. And while I will tell you about this training, and we're going to finish it, you know, within an hour, I will tell you that I just finished about 2 years ago a free complimentary veteran certificate that any hiring manager, HR professional, recruiter can obtain also. And if you have questions about that, you know, I'm happy to share that with you. But it will go into some of these details, but in a lot more depth. But as you can see, we have a list of things that we are going to focus on that might, you know, might be including things like policies and procedures around military personnel. If you've been in HR or hiring manager, you're probably familiar with the military pieces of family medical leave, and then also the uniformed services and employment laws. And then each state also has some laws around that too. And then we've got other things like, how do we make them feel included? What should we be doing during our onboarding process? And what should we do, you know, after that process? So let's look at our first set of statistics here in terms of what value the veterans specifically can bring to a civilian workforce. Number one, you can guarantee that they're very educated because they have to go through training. I know I went through basic training when I was in the military, but then I also went to a tech school, and that was like 3 months every day, you know, kind of an 8 to 5 kind of thing. I think maybe it was even 7 to 5. And then later, when I wanted to train for the other program, I was sent away again to another 3 or 4 month training program. And so they are very educated in, specifically, especially if they're a specialist of any kind. I didn't know then that ground safety job and the training that I had would help me in my HR career, but now it does, because I deal a lot with OSHA, and we were using the Air Force Occupational Safety and Health program, and now we're using very similar. It just doesn't have Air Force in front of it. The other things that we know is that most employers are at least 68% are reporting that veterans perform better. They do have a good work ethic. They've been forced, if you will, to perform because it's not like they can get by with anything not doing their job. And when they're in the military, so that's one thing that you can expect. And the other thing is that 4 out of 5 employers are reporting difficulties filling jobs due to the lack of available talent. And it's gotten worse, obviously, since the pandemic. Veterans as well as military spouses can help meet this need, and they may ask the question why, and HR professionals are reporting that veteran recruiting is a top 3 priority right now. So I think that is a good thing. although just being in HR for this long and having lots of friends in HR and staff members, I know that there is a lot of training on their side of what they need to know to be able to understand the veteran. On the other hand, although veterans have many on-demand skills, they still face employment challenges. For example, why do more than 65% of veterans leave their first job post-separation within 2 years? Well, it's important for veterans to understand that the position for which they are applying and the overall company culture may not be very, well, most likely is not very similar to what they were expecting and experiencing in the workplace in the military. So understanding the position requirements with the company culture in mind will certainly help leverage their individual talents within the workplace. And an employer's investment in a strong, effective military hiring practice starts with ensuring adequate resources that are dedicated to include HR professionals and leaders through the process. So who will be the champion of military hiring? Well, that is right now the SHRM Foundation with this new Veteran Ambassador Program, and they are working with other organizations as well as the Veterans Initiative that they started back in 2017. I know a few years ago, Ohio State Council of SHRM actually raised about $25,000 to help veterans. Some of the challenges that veterans face include finding, the good fit, a new career, post their job, and also it depends on what you do. So for example, I was in ground safety. I worked with a gentleman who was in missions safety, and then I had another one that was in weapons safety. So when you go out into the civilian world and you say you're in weapons safety, most HR people would be like, well, okay, so how does that convert? And also the weapons safety person doesn't necessarily know how those skills might look. But they do transition, and that's the hard part, is trying to find some kind of match and thinking about, taking that job title away and thinking about the details of what they were doing. And of course, unfortunately, we do have some people that are coming in with disabilities and things like that. One thing worth noting is that while some veterans do struggle, it is important to remember that many civilians also struggle with disabilities too. And when I say disabilities, I am talking about both mental and physical disabilities. So it's not just one-sided there. Veterans face one set of employment challenges, especially at the point when they are transitioning from the military, but military spouses also face their own unique employment challenges. Now, here in Springfield, we are not as close to the military spouses that if your employer is just hiring right here, but if you are hiring outside of Springfield and you have employees all throughout the state or all throughout the country, you may have the ability to hire military spouses that are living and working near a base like Scott Air Force Base here in Illinois, and throughout the country there are bases all over. So if you looked at these statistics here, you can see, that there is a lot of opportunity where these military spouses, both man and woman, are seeking employment at the same time that their spouses are serving in the military and serving our country. So, so one of the things too is looking at relocation opportunities, because if you are an employer that does have the ability for a spouse to come to work for you here or somewhere else, in the country, And then they might have an opportunity to transfer within the organization to another location should their military spouse get redeployed. Then that is a huge incentive for them to come to work for you. And so advertising and posting that that opportunity is a really good way to get them. Veterans and military spouses have different challenges, but they bring many of the same sought after soft skills in the workplace that any one of us do in the civilian world. For example, employers continue to place high value on the core competencies veterans honed during their military service. Likewise, those military spouses may develop valuable skills like resilience, the ability to tolerate ambiguity, and perseverance as a result of their affiliation with the military. I can definitely speak from experience here as well, because my daughter is married to a military member, and she's always, like on the spot, and she's a chiropractor too, but you just never know, like she's got to learn flexibility and things like that, because when he's called up, she's got to be ready, and they have 3 kids, and so they have to manage all of that with that. So these skills are a way of life for the veterans and military spouses that that serve as values, and it adds to the whole idea of the work ethic, improved work ethic, and that type of thing. Now that we've established why veterans and military spouses make great employees, let's talk about some of the trends that are influencing veterans and military hiring. And that is something that will definitely impact veteran and military spouse employment with some of these few trends. Keep in mind that since 2001, over 3 million veterans have joined the civilian workforce. Service members continue to transition from the military each year, and most of them are definitely still of working age, because you can't, a lot of them start when they're 18. My son-in-law, for example, he's going to be out by the time he's 38 and starting his new career. So very young, actually. And you can't, in the military, you can't get in after the age of 34. So, if they put 20 years, they're still only in their 50s and still have a lot of years left to contribute to the workplace. Recognizing the challenges veterans face with regard to employment has led the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to try to work together and make some successful partnerships that have developed in, as you see here, these 3 bullets under the first larger bullet here. The Veteran Jobs Mission, the Chamber of Commerce, hiring our heroes, and then the White House's joining forces. While many of these efforts have been quite successful in impacting the unemployment rate for veterans, the employment rate for the military spouse has remained, unfortunately, very unchanged. So there's not been a lot of focus on that. But on a positive note, there has been a greater recognition of the impacts of military service on families, and a number of efforts have formed to try to impact the problem of spouse employment. This has also included greater emphasis on military caregivers and veterans with disabilities. I had a person reach out to me that was going to join us tonight, and they actually had written a book about military spouses. So there's a lot of documentation going on out there. Some other significant trends mirror broader workplace trends, such as focus on the future of work and acceleration of remote work, which obviously since the pandemic, that's been a huge impact on our entire society. And then overall, again, another emphasis over the last 2 years, again, a much deeper understanding and appreciation for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. So veterans and military spouses actually play into that, just like any other gender, race, ethnicity, even age, all play into the diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as an example, even though the veteran population is smaller than in recent years, it is more diverse than ever before. Women veterans, for example, are the fastest growing subpopulation. According to the VA, the Veterans Administration, the total population of women veterans, for example, is expected to increase significantly at the average rate of about 18,000 women per year for the next 10 years. I know that a few years ago, we were doing something with veterans, and it turned out that the statistics at that time showed us that we, as women veterans, were really only 3% of the actual population. Only 3% of women went into the military, at least when, several years ago. And of course, I'm a little older, so when I went in, it was very rare to have women. Matter of fact, when I was looking through a program that is set up for us, they showed a lot of classes for males and maybe, a handful for women. The post 9/11 veteran population is a large component of the veteran population, with 20% of all veterans having served after 9/11. They have high levels of education, are more likely to have a service connected disability because of their required deployments, especially those who are on active duty. They have a requirement to go on active or to deploy, about every 2 to 3 years. And sometimes it's a 3-month gig, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year and a half. So, so those are, some of those times where they might get affected by something that causes a disability. While the unemployment numbers are constantly changing and veterans unemployment has suffered during COVID-19, it is important to understand where we've been and where we want to go in the future. As you can see, veteran employment has improved over time after peaking during the Great Recession in 2011, when many of those most significant employment focuses efforts began. It began a lot after the recession. So many of those initiatives that have been implemented over the past decade appear to have influenced the employment rates of veterans, but again, not so much on the military spouse side. While veterans have seen a decline in their unemployment rates across the past decade, military spouses have seen relatively high unemployment that has been resistant to change. In fact, military spouses have an unemployment rate that is roughly 3 times that of their civilian peers, despite a number of efforts in recent years focused on hiring military spouses. This is one of the reasons we focus on both the veterans and the military spouse in this training and others. And what I didn't mention at the beginning was that I have 2 other programs that I can provide. And this is, definitely free for any business to come in and train their employees, or any organization to train, because we're just trying to make a difference and change people's perception and or educate, so that people have an easier time recruiting these folks. So let's now talk about the challenges and assets of the veteran and the military spouses. Some of the most common are listed here, and you can see there's a great variety, from everything for having the right job opportunities to dealing with the stereotypes, and having those resume gaps because somebody might have been deployed. Or think about a military spouse. There are some countries when your spouse is deployed that you cannot work outside the base, and some countries where you can't work at all. So I know for sure, because I also come from a long line of military members. And so while my brother was in the military, his spouse was not able to work outside the base in Italy, and not at all, I think, in Germany as well. So there are some restrictions which cause some of these resume gaps. It's not their choice. It's not what they would like to do, but it's what they have to do to be able to stay as a family unit together, all in one place. Veterans and military spouses are often included under the same hiring initiatives, but the business case, their skill sets, strengths, and workplace preparedness may be different. So you see here a list of things like the veterans may have work experiences, leadership, industry relevant certifications, but unable to translate that into civilian terms. And like I said before, even the HR person or the hiring manager doesn't necessarily know how to translate the experience into military terms. And we do have some trainings that will go into that, which is really that 10-week program, or that 10-hour program that I told you about earlier. But lack of civilian network, military spouses may be highly educated, but either lack experience, have resume gaps, or non-linear work. So for example, my daughter has been, she met her husband in Arizona. He worked there, and they moved to California, and then now they're in Missouri. But when they were in California, and she had already had a company, a chiropractic company in Arizona, when she went to California, the base commander there was giving her a really hard time about getting started, because he was using his stereotypes and thinking about his military spouses not being a highly educated person and being able to provide services to their community, and really was a really stressful thing, which is partly why they're back in Missouri now. So unfortunately, those stereotypes are not just out in the civilian world. Sometimes they're actually in the military world as well. So now that we know some of the challenges veterans and military spouses face with regard to the employment, it's easy to see why businesses might want to try and help. But the reality is that hiring efforts need to be tied to the goals of the business, just like any other hiring effort. It has to be tied to the goals of the business. And so there has to be a business case. And we're going to talk about some of those business cases as we go, and maybe you can actually relate these to your own organization as well. So first, think about why a veteran or military spouse would want to work for your business. In the old days, I remember, we used to interview people, and we thought, oh, we're interviewing them, they're not interviewing us. But that's not the case anymore. We have to sell our company as an employer of choice just as much as they are, they are selling themselves on being able to work and do the job that we're trying to hire for. So veterans and military spouses rely heavily on what their peers say about your company. So whatever your reputation is, that's very important. They will also read what's out on the internet, especially on any of the sites that do take comments for employers. And there's one that I'm trying to think of right at the top of my head, and I can't think of it, but I'm sure it'll come to me by the end of the session. Manage your online reputation actively and consistently through social media and sites like Instagram, Indeed, Yelp, LinkedIn, Facebook, and wherever else you want to go. Your greatest brand ambassadors are the veterans that are already working for you, if you have any. They can certainly help speak favorably. So if you've got a website and have a career page on it, it's a great idea to have some testimonials from some of those employees that are veterans. on there to help focus on that type of hiring. Now let's consider, why would you want to hire a veteran or military spouse? First, veteran skills are proven under the toughest of environments, and they get behind a purpose. They are very loyal, typically. They have a strong leadership optimization, and think about the way they've been trained. It's about us, not me. And so if you've got a lot of self-centered employees, that is, that's a big difference, because they are there to help support each other and not just themselves. They do add value to organizational performance because they garner early equity among peers, and they have always been trained to work in teams. So they're used to that. Not a good idea probably to put some veterans in a standalone job where they can't talk to anybody. They're used to working in their teams. And then don't forget, here in Illinois, we've got and the federal government, actually, we have that work opportunity tax credit. So you can earn up to $10,000 in federal and state tax credits by hiring veterans and keeping track of those hires. So in general, there are some good reasons that it is good business. And the case for the military spouses is, before we answer that question, let's talk about what a business case is. It's a case that captures the reasoning behind a certain project or task and how it relates to the organization's overall goals. So having a business case for military affiliated hiring is important because it explains how it benefits the business, what resources you're going to be using, and whether there will be a buy-in from your employees and the top of your organization. And then finally, what types of positions and roles align best with those goals and would help the whole program be successful. So take a minute to think about what the business case for your organization might be. And feel free to use the chat to communicate that, and we can kind of incorporate that into our next example. All right, so our first example is, even if you were able to construct your own business case example, sometimes it is helpful to see a couple of examples first, and then take a minute to think about yours. So I'll go ahead and read this for you. We know that to ensure our business remains strong, we need strong leadership at all levels and sound decision-making, strategic thinking, and a diverse and inclusive workforce. Veterans are men and women who have gained many of these precise skills and characteristics through their military service. Veterans offer organizational, tangible skills that will give our business a competitive advantage, including character, trainability, transferable skills, which is what I've been kind of focusing on quite a lot here, problem-solving skills, adaptability, leadership, team building, cultural awareness, and advanced technical skills. A thoughtful and strategic veteran hiring program could lead to exponential return on investment for the business. So that's one example of a business case, and somebody has thought it out. Certainly, you can borrow it. And throughout this module, you will see examples of companies who have successfully implemented a veteran hiring initiative. So if you look at this one, this is Fortune 500 company FISERV, and they have put together a program which focuses on the attributes of, sponsors, coalition to veteran-owned business, and they have a center of excellence for veteran and entrepreneurship, connecting military-owned businesses to resources and capital. They encourage client retention and growth, enhance visibility of companies' corporate citizenship efforts, and they have a robust employee resource group, including veterans, military spouses. And we can't forget that that also includes Guard and reservist. And so, Guard, the difference between the Guard and Reserve, they're both ready and available to go active at any time. But the Guard actually can also be called up to handle state emergencies. And that's a little bit of the difference if you hadn't heard that before. So now that we've learned a little bit about veterans and military spouses, what they bring to the workplace and how to think about a business case, let's think about how to implement military hiring program by taking a look at an employee life cycle. So if you see the visual here, there's 5 stages of an employee life cycle, and you can map that out and also be able to use kind of a dashboard, if you will, to provide tangible metrics for each of those areas. It is worth noting that these are the same processes that you would use with any employee, no matter if they were a veteran or not. You probably can do many of the same things you have always done, and you just have a little bit of a unique focus for veterans and military spouses. Additionally, before we move on, there are a few questions you would want to ask yourself as you are putting this plan together. And if you have some time, I would recommend you take these questions down. Who in the organization supports this hiring? What does the organization already have in place relating to veteran or military spouse hiring? When is the organization ready to deploy these initiatives? Where am I going to even find the job candidates? And I will tell you, I'm building a resource list for that kind of thing. I have met with a few people. We actually had 3 individuals speak at our local Society of Human Resources Management meeting last month in January. And we also have a list from before. So we're kind of collecting that information so that we can kind of be a resource for you. But that, that's just getting to know the people in the community that will help. And then finally, where do we have some support? And obviously CIC SHRM Foundation is definitely there to help you. So alignment is the synergy of workforce readiness. To ensure the synergy is occurring, veterans and employers need to examine a few things. The veteran themselves, do their current skills actually match the needs of the role? Whatever the job description, whatever the hiring ad says, and is the role in their preferred career field? Is it a match? Are they leveraging any preferential hiring policies? So, for example, I just turned my organization over to my partner temporarily while I go back in to work for the state. Well, the state does have a veteran hiring initiative. And so, of course, you have to prove that you're a veteran, and they have, take all of your documentation and they go through a process. It takes time. But that helps with, with numbers if you've got some sort of hiring policy around that. Employers, they have to think about other things like, do we as a business have a working knowledge of the military skills? Does our current workforce develop support for veterans? Do we currently have or can we implement any other workplace support to ensure success for both our veteran hiring and our non-veteran hires? And of course, if you can answer yes to any of those questions, then you're definitely ready to go. You're ready, you're on your way. There are several other reasons for best practices for employer readiness. And I will tell you that this presentation is out and available online. If all you do is get on your browser and put in veteran ambassador training, you go to that website and you can actually download these slides for free. So, and of course I'm available if you need them, but these can be, good information for people. The resumes, there's some best practices for that as well. And here's a case study that they did with COCA-COLA, showing what they've done with the American corporate partners to provide more than 280 career mentorships to veterans. And there's even a person here that you can read this, of course, Lillian Norton, who has worked as a veteran. And so some of the attributes of this program that COCA-COLA did was workforce alignment, recognizing that particular segment, and being that employer of choice as a military friendly organization. I will tell you that there is, just like there is, women friendly organization list out there, and magazines. There is the same for military. What kinds of organizations are military friendly? And just like employer of choice, you can apply as an organization, become part of that list, which is where some of them will go first. And then, of course, they demonstrate appreciation for our nation. Typically, if you're looking to hire people for a long-term position, you should aim for talent acquisition so as to lower a potentially high turnover rate, which is a possible effect of recruiting less qualified candidates. Talent acquisition takes more time up front, because you go through a process. Like I use a program called targeted selection, where I'm really targeting on the job skills that I need, and my questions are really based around that. And because I do a better job of hiring it up front, I have a better chance to keep those people long term. And so this kind of goes through what is that talent acquisition process, and you can kind of think about, how can I focus on veteran or military spouse hiring using the same process and even interviewing techniques that you would with anyone else. So it's not like you have to do anything differently. You just, you use the same questions and that kind of thing and target. But as you can see here, the military does have a set of specific military occupational codes that can correlate to your job. And we do have some additional training in that certificate that I mentioned that gives you a lot more detail on how you can go out and find what those military codes actually match the jobs that you're looking for. So OneNet is a really great source, and that is or I should say ONET, sorry. ONET, it is an O and it has an asterisk, O asterisk NET. If you put that in your browser, you should be able to find that. That actually, you can put in, like, let's say you're looking for a budget analyst. You can put a budget analyst, and then it'll come up with what are the military occupation codes for budget analyst, just in case that somebody puts their resume, I was such and such in the military, and they don't know any better, that actually does translate to a business analyst. But you would know because you're the recruiter and you've learned this, that you can go out and do that. I would recommend that you avoid judgment around job changes for spouses and family members supporting those who serve. Again, related to all those deployments and relocation. Don't think the typical job hopper, I'm going to pitch that one. And really, I wouldn't do that anyway because of COVID, because these people were being given federal money to sit on the couch and we can't do anything about that. So there might be some some job hopping or gaps of employment because of those things. These styles provide the best opportunities for the interviewer to engage applicants in conversation that invite them to shift out of the military's polite and respectful mode, which may involve applicants giving short responses. So I actually recommend this whole behavior situational interviewing process for any candidate. Doesn't matter, what your focus is on. The program that I mentioned earlier, targeted selection, it is very behavioral based. And there are some situational questions as well, where we're really asking what past behavior is as a predictor of future behavior. So again, not something you have to change if you're already doing that. And it's certainly something that can help all of your hiring and not just hiring for military. There's a organization out there called Smashfly. In 2018, the Recruitment Marketing Benchmarks report for all the Fortune 500 employees reported that 33% of those companies offered candidates an opportunity to opt in to job alerts or a talent network that they never sent any email post confirmation. That Talent Board 2016 candidate experience research reported that 47% of those candidates were still waiting to hear back from the employers 2 months after they applied. That's not a good thing. So be clear when defining the necessary competencies and skills for each role in which you're sourcing. Keep in mind that the competency is the ability to do something successful, while a skill is learned activity. And think about what your feedback and communication methods are, because especially in today's environment right after COVID, I haven't seen more job openings in my life than I have seen in the last 2 years, especially the last year. People are really moving. They call it the Great Resignation. That's so true. And so we've got to do everything we can as employers to try to keep that talent there. Military spouse candidates may have difficulty demonstrating that they are a good fit for a position through their resume alone. And as I said, they may show some gaps. I do recommend that you use these factors and take them into account when you're reviewing military spouse resumes. Consider using high-touch approach, such as behavioral situational, as I mentioned earlier. And please keep in mind that not all spouses will want to self-identify, as there may be concerns that an employer will be unwilling to consider their application due to fear about anticipated relocation. So they're already worried about whether or not you'll even look at them. So when you have that kind of thing going on, take time to get rid of that worry right in the very beginning of the process. You can post it, you can put it in your ads. We do not discriminate. We do welcome military spouse hire and that type of thing, because that's something that's already in their mind, because it's also being talked about in the community. So there's nothing better than seeing something with your own eyes. When you host a hiring fair, for example, that would be a great location where veterans and military spouses can connect with you. There is one thing that I've actually participated in 2 of these 4 things in the second bullet here. So the Employer Supportive Guard and Reserve, they have an annual program for bosses called the Boss Lift. And I actually went 1 year because I was the director of the Illinois SHRM. We had 22 chapters and 23 student chapters throughout the state. And they took us up to Portland, Seattle area, and actually showed us 4 different bases, different types like Army, Navy, Guard, Coast Guard, and Air Force, I believe. And really educated us on what was available and what kinds of learning they do. The other thing that I do, and they do a lot of training to try to get people to understand what the Guard and Reserve do and respect that commitment, so that they're not, made to feel guilty if they can't work on a weekend because they're serving their Guard or Reserve unit. And the other thing I've worked on is the Wounded Warrior Project. I actually went down to Scott Air Force Base and did some help with, trying to help them get their resume together, and also help them with, what kinds of interview questions might be asked and that type of thing. So again, another example, Lockheed Martin is a very good they have a very good program for hiring veterans and people in military spouses. And of course, we have a summary of, what we've really covered here. There are a lot of tips in this program to help you to source, give you ideas about how you can source candidates. One of the things I found is there's a Twitter feed on Monday nights at 9 o'clock called Job Network. And they actually had a bunch of military people that jumped on there and was looking for jobs. And they learned a lot of things because this group is made up of recruiters. And so they would give, live feedback about what needs to be done. The main thing you have to think about for onboarding is acclimating, engaging them, and retaining them. There's certainly a lot of great ideas with all of those that that we found. If you just have these 3 goals for onboarding, then you're going to have a much more successful program. And then there are a lot of good ideas here for onboarding with, thinking about it from, sending a letter, typing, giving them IDs that required to sign in, and even a reminder or email to the hiring manager can help reduce the new hire's time to productivity by a full month. A lot of HRIS systems now are able to help with the onboarding process. Now I know we're getting close to our hour, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit more. Again, these are additional great ideas of things that you can do to help make that first day with regard to onboarding in that first 3 months successful. And remember those 3 things: acclimate, engage, and retain. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about some talent development that can be considered. So once you have them on board, you want to think about, how am I going to develop them, and if you do have good development programs, that helps to improve your retention, certainly. So there's several great ideas here that are important. If your budget does permit, then you can outsource individuals or teams with expertise that they can help drive projects to successfully develop your long-term staff. And if not, it might be just you on that is responsible. Challenges to effective integration, as you can see here: conflicting priorities, limited resources, non-supportive cultures, incompatible organizational processes, and even senior leaders who undervalue integrated talent management. Those are all possible barriers that you have to consider. So veterans frequently report a lack of understanding related to the workforce norms. And I mentioned that earlier in the program. There's a different type of culture in the military that they may be accustomed to, and they've got to come together with it, being so different in the civilian workplace. Shell Oil, for example, has this career transition opportunity program that helps to helps to develop the employee so that they understand the differences in the culture. And the final step in the employment life cycle is the talent mobility. Successful talent mobility programs affect all aspects of the business, such as operations, finance, or even human capital. So you've got to pivot and focus on employees and your business growth, and help those veteran community members understand their expectations with mobility, because they are used to mobility in a military workforce, because they have to test up for each stripe, or test up for each officer rank, and that is just a part of the culture there. So some additional best practices with talent mobility: 85% of employees consider themselves disengaged. You wouldn't really think that, but that is what has been going on when there's no focus on engagement. And also think about, what is your return on investment? You have the opportunity to leverage existing veteran employees to help with the mentorship. I mentioned that earlier. You can have them come actually to some of your recruiting fairs. Sodexo has a great program where they focus on, again, talent development, and they have lots of opportunities for employees, so that the employee feels like you're engaging them, and when they feel valued, they're going to stay. Again, additional opportunities: career mapping and job promotion. Having some plans in place about where they can go and acclimate themselves to what was on the plan for them. Several of you may already have a veteran or military spouse or hiring employment program, while others may be beginning the stages or starting one. A great way to check out the viability of your program is by going through each stage of the employment life cycle and asking yourself the corresponding questions. Can you then review your current employee situation? So, be sure to check out the SHRM Foundation's Veteran Employment Digital Toolkit. They have a whole toolkit out there that will help you implement a successful program. And as I mentioned earlier, there is the Veteran at Work certificate. And if you are in a job field, for example, that gives learning credits, it is 10 hours of professional development credits that you have to go through to complete it. So certainly something that you might look at, adding to your resume even for going forward. So leaving you with two things. This, with the closing, the simple truth is that every veteran has his own unique story, his or her, and there is no single narrative about the issue of veterans finding civilian work employment, and no single solution. So I want to thank you, and I also want to ask you, are you willing to hire just one member of the military community? If so, and if you do, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me on literally almost any social media. I'm out there and available to find. And if you tell me you've hired somebody, I will then report that to SHRM Foundation that, hey, well, my presentation actually helped somebody get a job. So that would be great. And of course, I don't need the details. I just need to know that you did hire somebody. So I'm available. And if you have any questions, certainly reach out. There are certainly a lot of references here that we've used to prepare this presentation. And again, that's out there on that SHRM Foundation Veteran Ambassador website that you can download or just email me. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate you taking the time. And there was just a lot of great information in here and things that I hadn't thought about. So I'm going to definitely, share this recording with our network so that we can, help you spread the word here. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. I know we had a little bit of a late start, so thank
No
you very
worries.
much. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.